Hi, I'm Coleman Glenn. I'm the assistant pastor at Bryn Athyn College. We're about halfway through the term dealing with the current coronavirus crisis. And today I wanted to talk about one of the big questions that I think a lot of people are asking right now, which is simply, why is this happening? Why is there the suffering that's going on? Why are there the hardships? What's going on? And it's a question we can actually ask anytime, because anytime, at any point in human history, there's intense human suffering going on if we're willing to look. And we can ask why. Why is this happening? And I want to start out by saying that when we come to any specific situation, particular situation like what we're dealing with now, the simplest answer is I don't know. I don't know why we're dealing with exactly what we're dealing with now. But there are principles from the new church that help guide my thinking about why something like this might happen and where the Lord is in all this. And so the first key idea that I cling to in a time like this is that the Lord does not will suffering and death. That's not the Lord's will. That's not the Lord's plan. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. And I think that summarizes who he is. He's a God of life. In the Old Testament, in the prophet Ezekiel, a passage I love, even for wicked people, it says, As I live, says the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. So everything about God is that he wills life and health and happiness for all of us. And so when something harmful, when there's suffering, when there's premature death, that's not God's will. And the new church really carefully differentiates between the Lord's will, what he wants to happen, and his permission, the things that he allows to happen, even though he wishes they wouldn't. And if he allows something to happen, he allows it only because it would be more harmful for him to stop it. So, for example, people need to be free. For God to be able to love people and have a real relationship with them, they need to be free to choose to love him back and love other people, or not to do that. And so they have to be free to be able to hurt others, as harmful as that is and as hard as that is. So for the sake of freedom, people have to be allowed to hurt other people. Now, it can be harder to understand something like a disease, though. A disease doesn't seem to have anything to do with freedom. Why does God allow diseases? And my reading of the teachings for the new church is that God allows diseases for actually something of a similar reason, that for us to truly be free, we have to live in a world that has influences, even down to the physical level, that has influences from heaven and influences from hell. And my understanding of the teachings of the new church is that it is influences from hell that lead to diseases. And that does not mean that someone who gets sick is culpable for any particular evil. The Lord explicitly denies that. There was a time when his disciples said, when they saw a blind man, well, who sinned, this man or his parents? And the Lord said, no, neither sinned. So someone being sick doesn't mean they've done anything evil. But the general influence of evil is responsible for the existence of diseases in this world. And so we face situations like the one we're in now, where there are people getting sick and suffering and dying. And we can't ask, where is the Lord in this? I think part of the answer is that the Lord is in the love in it, the support in it, the work of the healing professionals in it. But in general, the answer, I believe, is that if something is happening that is harmful, that is against the Lord's will, still he doesn't allow it unless he sees that in the long term, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from now, good will come from it. This is really exemplified in the story of Joseph from the book of Genesis. Joseph has an awful life. His brothers hate him. They plan to kill him, and then they decide to sell him as a slave so they can make a little money out of it. As a slave, he works diligently, he does well, he's blessed, and then he's falsely accused of something he didn't do. He's thrown into prison. And in prison, again, he continues to trust the Lord. And still, he's forgotten there in prison. And eventually it gets to the point where he's in charge of almost all of Egypt, and he stores up grain because he knows that a famine is coming, and he saves lives. And he even saves his own brothers' lives. They come back, and he's able to save their lives, and eventually he reveals who he is to them. And when their father dies, his brothers are afraid because they know that what they've done to Joseph, and they're afraid now he's going to take revenge. And these are the words Joseph says to them. Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is at this day, to save many people alive. You meant it for evil, God meant it for good. And I think that's the way it is with any harmful thing. The evil spirits, the forces of hell, mean it for evil, but God will bring good of it. And this is what the teachings of the new church explicitly say. This is from the book Arcana Coelestia. It says, nothing is permitted except for the end that some good may come out of it. But as man has freedom, in order that he may be reformed, he is bent from evil to good, so far as he allows himself to be bent in freedom. So, the Lord allows evil. Doesn't want it to happen, but he allows it, and he sees some good that can come out of it. And so in a situation like we're in, I don't think we have to be able to necessarily see what the good is. In fact, it's important to sometimes simply say, I do not understand. To cry out, Lord, why? To even be angry. To be frustrated. I don't think we have to give this pat answer, oh, there's good coming from it. I think it's okay for us to grieve and mourn and shout. But underneath that all, I think we can look for that hope. That someday, somehow, the Lord is working all things towards good.